Can you see this thing? It's a first aid kit for mental health that we, Dobman, created this spring, and it's now tested on 1,000 people in Sweden to see if we can manifest change the attitudes toward mental health at workplaces. This is a first aid kit, or maybe I should say it's a service, since this is a service design conference and services are what we do. Stress and anxiety are the most common reason for a long-term sick leave now. It's true for Sweden, it's true for the UK, and it's true for all of Europe. And this problem is growing. And of course, that costs loads of money each year, but also it is a big influence on a person's life. Handisam, which is a Swedish agency for disability policy coordination, they came to us with the question, like, how can we change the behavior around mental health at workplaces? And Swede, and this is our logo, but without the typeface, called out and said, let's use service design as a way to come up with good solutions. Together with Swede, we created a summer camp for design students and behavioral students who came along with us last summer to make their research. They interviewed employees, employers, behaviorists, psychiatrists, people who had been on sick leave, to find out what is it on the workplace that really matters. And also, they took those insights they got and created concepts on what to do. And together we evaluated these concepts and came up with the idea of a metaphor, the first aid kit, which is always there, you know where to find it, and you always know how to use it. And Handisam loved this idea and wanted it to come real. And that's what we've been working on then for this year. Creating this service took a lot of people. And together with Handisam, we reached out to find companies who wanted to finance this project. And we came along with 3 companies. It was Swedbank, E.ON, who was here yesterday, and there's a construction firm called NCC in Sweden. Their human resource people came along with the project, along with psychiatrists, and also ambassadors, people who have been on sick leave before and now have the first-hand experience. And then Doberman came in as the design team. And this is us in our first workshop. Our approach was to achieve change, and I'm going to share with you 3 ways or perspectives on how we think we're doing that. First, we go from leaders to co-workers or colleagues. Usually, one tends to use the leader in an organization for spreading the word. Like, now is a new thing coming, use the leader and she'll talk you through it. This might be efficient from the organization perspective, that is fast, like everyone knows things. But it's not very democratic, and also we don't think that it's good of a change, really. But we want to change attitudes, and then we think that we have to really work together with the colleagues. And that, of course, includes the leaders, who is a colleague, but it also includes all the co-workers. And we can explore and use their networks and how they communicate to really achieve the change we're looking at. Of course, this is not a single tool, but it's kind of one tool. And there is no holy grail in this, but we think that there are loads of initiatives that are needed on a governmental level, and of course also leader educations and stuff like that. The second change is going from a read more perspective to getting some action out of it. It should be easy to just inform or educate about oh, stress and anxiety is really important, and you might get stressed out or burnt out or even die. But we don't think that there is a lack of information in this area, but rather there is a lack of action. So we started off by figuring out what kind of actions do we want to encourage. And the service we created circles around the phone line. It's a phone line where you can call if you feel stressed out, yourself, or if you worry about a colleague. And all the health providers have phone lines you can call, but usually it's an exchange. You call them and they say, what can I help you with? Economics or health or anything? And we think that if you are kind of in a tunnel vision state where you don't have anything left but this phone to hold on to, it's really important that you get the right person immediately. So the change we've done here is you call a behaviorist who can kind of catch you where you are and ask the right questions and guide you through to get the right help that you might need. And as simple as it might sound, from a prototyping perspective, this was really difficult to achieve. Trying to change all the health providers having this hotline, they thought it was too expensive and too difficult to achieve, so therefore we bought them cell phones. So now there are behaviorists in Sweden with a cell phone picking up when someone is calling from this number. Also we need, of course, then this kind of thing on the wall to encourage people to call and also to know where the phone number really is. And how should that box look like? Now you know that this is the end result, but this is where we started. And we talked about ways of communicating, like how important this is. Should we be very dramatic, talking about more people dying from stress and anxiety than in traffic each year? Or should we be very gentle, like not frightening people, but rather telling about the importance of getting help and how easy it really is to get help? And also we discussed things, how do you approach this type of thing on the wall? What drags you in there and what do you do while you're at it? A good way we thought was creating some sort of self-assessment tool. Not only saying, oh, are you having trouble sleeping? Do you have a problem with concentrating? But rather also put something interactive on the box. So while you're reading, you're also kind of answering the questions and then start reflecting on how it really is. Also, by adding these sliders, we make something that kind of looks a bit interesting that might get people to approach the box. And also, you leave a trace. When you've done your settings and you leave, it's in there for other people to see. They won't know it's me who've done it, but it does things to the climate at the entire workplace, if there is such thing that everyone can see and reflect on in wider circles. And from there, we started creating prototypes. We thought it was really important for us to test out this concept like straight away. And we created, I think it was 7 prototypes with different sorts of self-assessments, like how many questions can we put in there. These are questions that are both kind of positive, like I sleep well, I feel happy, and negative, to see how that affects people. And also we had like different amounts of text, we had different tones of voices and so forth, just to try out every perspective of it. And then we put up the test. We put it in 2 different locations. This is our office, and we tried different contexts, like more private areas, such as the restrooms or utility rooms, and also more public spaces, like the coffee machine or the entrance, as it's pointed out here. Also to see, like, what does it feel like if I'm alone with this thing? And how would it be to actually interact with something when everyone can see that I'm doing it right now? And together with the ambassadors who came out in testing it, who had been on sick leave previously, and also we had a colleague perspective, we discussed back and forth, and they also left comments to us, and we came up with a kind of final content then of the self-assessment, the phone service. And also it came up that if you are a colleague and you worry about someone, it will be very helpful to get some sort of help on how to approach that person. As a colleague, you always see when someone is feeling bad. You see it, but you don't know, or you might not dare approach that person and ask, like, how are you today? So therefore, we added also a small guide on how to approach people, what to say, what to do. And this is the final ecosystem with the phone service, the first aid kit, and also we thought of ways of introducing the kit to human resource persons who are the buyers of this box, and also some sort of introduction event. Instead of sneaking this box into an organization, we think that for accomplishing the change in attitudes, we would like to have some sort of big party maybe, a big bang that is positive, that people can relate to in a positive way. Like, okay, this organization is making this investment for us to make us feel better about ourselves and changing this company. And now we all know what it's all about. The third change is going from a factory floor to a design office. Traditionally, the first aid kits, they look like this, and they're designed for the factory floor. If someone have a massive bleed, you run there, you put out the bandages, and you solve the problem. But nowadays, and also true for the mental health issues, they occur in offices. And in offices like this, a first aid kit might look awkward. And then the interior designer says, like, I don't want this, and hides it away someplace where you can't find it. That's true for our office. When I was looking for prototyping bandages, I kind of reached out, and then I found a first aid kit, like, hidden behind the microwave in the kitchen. So we had to create something that kind of blends in to this modern environment rather than a factory floor. Also, we thought that it might be a good idea to not take more wall space than you already having for the first aid kit, and therefore we made one kit to rule them all. We included both the mental health part and the physical part. And I think by doing that, not only is it wall estate that you earn, but also the objective of we're treating a whole person here. We're addressing a whole person here, which is both mind and body. And also, if it is in a public place, it might be easier to approach it like I'm going for a bandage, but really I'm going for the phone number, and that might also help. And from there, it was the design process that took us further. We had this also here multidisciplinary team with a service designer, visual designer, copywriter, and industrial designer. We worked together, sketching, of course, like first on hand and whiteboard, and then putting it further and further into like the 3D sketches. And then finally it came from the factory and looked like this. And this is a prototype, and therefore it kind of, all these constraints of how it's built, we have to live with those. But for our test, I think it works pretty well. Here it's mounted on a wall in one of our testing companies. It's now out for a period from September until December. We're going to do some measurements both on the box but also on the calls, and then also surveys and interviews about the attitudes and how that might change from this. And I'm going to take you through the box a bit. Can you read that? So do that. Would you dare sharing, like how many in here have replied yes or sometimes to 2 or more of these questions?
Sorry, we can't read it.
No, you can't read it. Okay, I'll read it for you then. The first one is, how have you been feeling over the last month? Did you have problems enjoying things you usually enjoy? Did you experience any sense of inadequacy? Did you have trouble sleeping? Did you feel unable to affect your situation? Did you experience any stress symptoms such as headaches, sweating, irregular heartbeat, breathing problems, chest pressure, anxiety? Did you avoid any social interactions? And did you have problems concentrating?
Sounds like we should call.
You should call. And that's the problem here, that it's so very common. It's also spread out. I mean, I feel this, not always, but sometimes Sure. And if you let it go too far, of course, you will probably get burned out someday. And the goal for us is always to keep people still within the organization, like remove the problem, not the person. But as you see, we added sliders, like here they are, and you can put them in there, take a step back, reflect on what you're, like how do I really feel? And if it doesn't feel right today, come back tomorrow and do it again and again and again and try to reflect on yourself. And after that, we have that phone number, and it should really stand out and be the main thing of this box. And below that, we added this sort of short guide. And instead of saying exactly what you should say to a colleague that you worry about, we rather put out that you have to note if someone's behavior changes somehow. It could go both ways. Either someone is more expressive than usually, or that people is more introvert than usual. Also, you need to not confront that person, but rather ask him or her if she wants to talk about the situation with you, because if you don't have the trust, then there's no point. And if that person says, yes, I'd like to talk to you about this, then just listen. Don't give any advice, but sit there and be there for that person. Because it's also important to note that it's not your problem if someone else is having it. They're responsible for their own situation, and they are the ones who should do something about it. But of course, you could point them towards this phone number or go to your leader or do anything about the situation, and always encourage the action, but not taking over the responsibility. And also we added this little note, which is this summarizes the box mainly. And it was clear that when we talked to leaders in an organization, they really like the thing that they can have this card with them when they're talking to an employee and maybe hand it over. So from that sense, we have some sort of leader perspective as well. But as a colleague also, you could take it, or as a person who feels you're going to call it yourself. And below that, then, we have the physical part, where the bandages are and the stuff. And also, we added this first aid bag. If someone is unconscious, I mean, paper cuts you can handle right at the box. But if something more severe happens, then we thought that it might be more convenient to have a bag where the instructions for CPR really is, and you take it along. And then try to solve the problem at that place. And also below, it's you could add a shelf or a hook and then add the defibrillator right in there. And then we have kind of it all collected in the same spot. It's visible, you know where it is, and it is easy to use. So the brief for us was to change the attitudes and behaviors. And by doing a service that is kind of easy to grasp and easy to use, we think we are getting to something. But also by doing this box and hence manifesting the service into a tangible thing, it's so much easier to talk about. Like you can say, have you seen the new box? It's tangible, you can go there. And it's not an abstract service. And also this meant that the box could be on national TV and in newspapers. And while it was on TV, actually we got our first calls. They just spotted the phone number through the screen and called us. So now we know also that the demand is big and it might even have some conversion on it. So I think that's kind of the greatest change of them all. Because if we can prevent one person from going on a sick leave, we save the entire cost of our budget in the project. And I mean, you saw the amount of people involved. It's kind of a big project, even if it wasn't that long. And not only do we save that cost, but also we kind of save one person's life. And I think that's kind of what services design is all about. Thank you so much for listening.